All right, everybody. Ooh, I had a little roll of the tongue there. This is another episode of Remodelers on the Rise, and today I have Bryan Kaplan with Construction Consulting. Bryan, you could have got a little more creative with your business name.
I know. I just kind of looked at what I do and I was like, I'm in construction and I now work as a consultant. So I just put the two together and there you go.
Brilliant. Which I kind of find interesting because I would say you are one of the more creative people I know, but also very practical. So like you might mix those two together. You're like, dude, I'm a consultant for construction consulting. It works. So here you are. Here you are. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me.
You bet. I'm going to tell the people how we kind of know each other. We have a thing called the speaking of creative names, Construction Consultants Masterminds. Dan Ballman and Diane Gilson and David Loopberger and Vicky Suter. And sorry for not listening to everybody. But a couple of years ago, Diane and Dan in particular got together a group of construction consultants and said, you know what, it'd be good just for us to meet each month, encourage one another, help one another, have a little bit of a mastermind group. The last few years, we've been doing an annual in-person several-day meeting. That's been wonderful. And by golly, this past year, Bryan joined us, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I've gotten to know him. We've had several conversations and just seeing you in the different mastermind meetings that we've had. And like I already mentioned, but I've just been thrilled to have you in my world because you are challenging me to continue to innovate, get better, improve, think of systems, processes. You obnoxiously implement things very quickly.
And I appreciate that. And, it's been really fun being part of this mastermind and being, it's been great to get to know everybody. And I'm happy, my goal is to kind of challenge people in general. I challenge myself on a daily basis. So I'm happy that I've been able to kind of do that for you as well.
You have, it's been good. So I wanted to have you as a guest, and we were thinking through different topics. There's a lot of different topics that we could talk about. But the one we zeroed in on is technology in your remodeling business. And as I was thinking of kind of a title of this talk, I said a golden opportunity to integrate more technology into your remodeling business. We are in the throes of the coronavirus situation that's affecting everybody in different degrees of severity. But boy, coming out of this and also being in it, there's a golden opportunity to have some extra time to work on your business. And so often an area that you can work on is how do we integrate technology better that allows us to be more productive, efficient, profitable. So we're going to dig into technology in a remodeling business. And I wanted to kind of kick it off by saying, okay, when I say technology in a remodeling business, what are we talking about here? Lay it out for us a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And, you hit the nail on the head. We are definitely, have this golden opportunity now because I think the one thing that we know, Kyle, you and I hear this all the time. And as someone that was a builder for 20 plus years, time is that precious commodity that we never seem to have. And so that golden opportunity.
By the way, you look like you're 30 years old. So this whole 20 years thing, it always kind of throws me off. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see him like he's a young man. He's like, well, I've been doing this for 20 years and I was doing that for 10 years. Okay.
It hasn't always worked for me. Let's put it that way,
okay.
Having a youthful appearance, but when it comes down to it, you do have a golden opportunity as a construction business owner right now to kind of work on your business. And one of the great aspects is, if we talk about technology, it's not about just signing up for Buildertrend or Co-Construct or Procore, right? And I think that's where a lot of people's minds go. A lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about today and a lot of the work that I do with my clients is helping them with a very sort of lean management system approach when it comes to technology, and just understanding that the technology is there as a lever, but it's also a lot about our own personal behaviors and how we actually integrate or interact with it and what we expect of it to do for us in our construction business. So that's kind of what I think one of the core focuses of what today's talk is going to be on.
When we say lean technology, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so just like I kind of opened with Buildertrend, Co-Construct, and Procore, and by no means am I saying don't sign up for these platforms or they don't offer any value for you. They can offer immense value. The challenge is that most smaller, type construction businesses, and even medium-sized ones for that matter, it's often too complicated for them and they try to do too much too quickly. And so when we say lean, we say use the things that you already have, right? We all have email. Probably 90% of the people listening here would raise their hand right now if I said, does your email box always feel like it's overflowing? Does it feel like it, it runs you and you don't really run it? And so
I know it's weird, but sometimes I like to make them raise their hand, even though they're in their car listening to this or just sitting there. So raise your hand. Like if you think of your inbox as bloated, kind of overwhelming, there's just always too much in there. I think most people would kind of be like, yeah, it's just, I'm always constantly catching up. So I think it's super interesting. And it's not a topic that's talked about too much of like, how do we manage that better?
Yeah, for sure. And then, some other things, how to use different pieces of technology to help you think through some of the problems that you have in your construction business. It's not all solutions, right? So sometimes it's about using it as just a vehicle to help you understand your construction business better, maybe getting your team involved and getting some feedback in a way that, is kind of consolidated. I just had a client this morning reach out to me and we, had a great call yesterday. He was asking me, hey, what's the best practice for this? And I gave him 3 different options and they're all kind of technology driven, but it was all about him collaborating with his own team on something. So there's lots of these examples. So lean for me just really means simple, as simple as we can make it, using the easiest tools that we can kind of leverage, and in typically things that you're already using, just kind of thinking about them in a different way.
Gotcha. Awesome. So give me some of the trends you're seeing in technology in the residential remodeling industry.
Yeah. So I did a survey. It's coming up on, it's getting out of date a little bit now because it was almost 2 years ago, I think. But I did a survey of hundreds of construction businesses, small and some medium, but mostly small residential remodeling and new construction companies across Canada and the US. And we were looking at sort of 3 core things. We were looking at project management software, we were looking at time tracking, and we were looking at accounting. And what was really interesting is that on the accounting side, pretty much everybody's using something because, as we always say, we always have to keep score of the pennies in our construction business. When it came to project management and to time tracking, it was really interesting because basically a third in each category were not using anything, sort of formal or digital. And so on the time tracking side, people were still doing paper timesheets, which, I mean, if you're still using paper timesheets, and I say this at every time I talk about tech, is that's the lowest hanging fruit you can, pick off in your construction business. So get onto a platform, doesn't matter what it is, just start, sort of using something that's digital. And then, on the other side of the project management sphere, people weren't necessarily using anything for that. So it's a combination of some Excel sheets, maybe, and some text messages, maybe a group WhatsApp chat kind of thing, and nothing really formalized at all.
Gotcha. So on the time tracking, because I love just practicality of like a takeaway. You may not have realized this, but you called people out hard there. Like, come on, people, time tracking by hand, writing stuff out. What are you thinking? There's some quick recommendations on where they should go if they are guilty of still doing that.
Yeah. And first and foremost, I'm okay with calling everyone out on that because I'll tell you what, I did it for years. I had paper timesheets for years. When we switched to a digital system, I literally wanted to step in front of a mirror and smack myself and say, why didn't you do this sooner? And, it's the basic principle of leverage. So the further you push that fulcrum out, the more leverage you have. And so,
what does that mean?
So basically, if you think about, paper timesheets, for example, all the work, the load is right by you. So basically it means, simplest example is you have a board, you have a fulcrum, which is just like, say, a rock, and you've got a load on, or like a load on the other side, and you're trying to push that load up. So if you ever tried to lift anything like a big rock or, even a car or something like that, the closer that rock underneath the board is to you, the harder it is, right? The further you push that thing away, the easier it is to get that leverage, right? So anybody that's ever tried to lift up a glued down sheet of plywood would know this, by putting a 2x4 there and trying to, reef it up. So, but the general idea here with paper timesheets is that all that load is right at you, right? When you are the business owner, you have to go around, you have to get the paper timesheets. There's coffee spilt on them. They're not filled out correctly. Someone's missing one because they might've gone home early or whatever it is. And so as a business owner, it's impossible for you to get those hours every single week, pay the guys on time, guys and gals, I should say. And, so that's a real challenge. if you use a digital system, what you do now is you push that fulcrum. In other words, you push the load out towards the people that are responsible for reporting that information to you, because now they're the ones that have to input it into a digital system. You don't have to drive around anywhere. It's just a simple text message or a call to anybody that hasn't done it, or if you want to clarify some hours because they forgot to clock out, which is a very common thing on digital platforms, then it's a lot easier for you. So, and your original question was, where can they go to kind of, look at some of these things? Yeah. And honestly, there's a whole pile of them out there. I'll lead it off by saying that about 63% of people that I've surveyed in the accounting poll are using QuickBooks. And so QuickBooks does have T-Sheets, which integrates into their platform. So that's probably a very easy one for people to do, simply because it's, owned by the same company, and they work well together. Another one that I really like to recommend is a platform called Busy. And they have they have just a little bit of analytics inside of it. So you can kind of get some reporting and really understand it. It's just really simple. The UI, like the user interface, is really easy to use. So that one's a good one. And then there's also a fellow that, I've become friends with. I think you know him as well. Benjamin from Black Lab Apps. They have a product called Console, which I think does a nice job too. And then they've got some added features on there as well that may be specific to, some construction businesses out there.
Gotcha. Perfect. Objections that you hear when it comes to implementing technology in a remodeling business. What do you hear?
Yeah.
And then let's squash them, and then we'll move on to more specifics.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's important just to call out that when we talk about objections, usually there's kind of external ones and internal ones. And so the external ones we'll all sort of hear is, oh, I don't have time. My team's not going to adopt this. It's really expensive, to kind of, sign up with all these platforms. Like, have you seen the cost of, Buildertrend or Procore or anything like that? For me, what I try to do is look at the internal side. And I know that not every builder, got into business to, sit on their mini television in their pocket and use technology in that respect. Like, they got into the business before technology probably existed. And so internally, I think some of the challenges are that, it's another thing that you have to try and learn. And that can often be quite a hurdle for people. And so what I will say, though, is that the reality is that the world is moving this way. And, especially when we're talking about this golden opportunity right now, the situation that we're in, we're all sort of seeing where the adaptability to using technology platforms really comes into play. So, yeah, I do think that one of those big objections is that, it's sometimes it's really hard for people to accept that they're going to have to go and try and learn something. And I think it's important that you just have to start, you have to start and try with like the simplest way. So whatever it is, like little sort of wins inside of your email platform, for example, is a great way to start. So those are some of the objections that I typically see.
Gotcha. Yeah. Time to integrate it, which isn't a real, for a lot of people, there's a little more time on our hands. The cost of the software, I think sometimes we see the sticker price of it and go, wow, that's a lot. But when you start to think through productivity gains, efficiency gains, sales and marketing benefits of having some really solid project management or this or that, you start to add those up and you realize, wow, I'm paying for this very quickly. And then the adoption of it are my people going to implement this? And I got some old school, carpenters out there. I got these subs that won't do it. I'm looking for a lot of silver linings out of this whole situation. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that are much more open and realizing we've got to move with the times and adopt some of this. So, okay. Improve what you have first. You mentioned that earlier. We talked about email a little bit. Let's get into some practicality. What are some areas that people can look at that is pretty much across the board where they can implement technology? Why? Just so that because we're supposed to? No. So that we can be more productive, efficient. We can get more done with less. Talk about some very practical areas that you see some more low-hanging fruit.
For sure. Because you started doing this, I'm going to do it too. So if you're listening to this and you still have a notebook beside you and that's how you're taking your notes, raise your hand. Put your hand high in the air. Own it, people. You got to give them time to be embarrassed about it.
Okay. No, it's not embarrassed, right? If that works for them, so be it. but
Yeah,
raise your
for
hand.
sure.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
So about 8 or 9 years ago, I bought an iPad mini, and this really changed how I operated. And for those that don't know me, I worked in the business for 20 plus years. I started as like a carpenter's helper, worked all the way through every single position. I was a super and a project manager and then a general manager. And so as a site super slash PM, and then when I was a full-time sort of PM, going to all these client meetings, going to the site, all these sorts of things, this iPad changed my life. And so it's a simple thing. You know, when we say lean management, okay, iPad's not super cheap, but the reality is that you don't need any really fancy software here. You just need a G Suite, like a Google account. That's all you need to do what I'm going to tell you next, which is basically take all your notes when you're in a client meeting. You tell them, of course, at the beginning of the, so they don't think you're just, perusing the internet or text messaging somebody, that you're going to take your notes, using this device. And the beautiful part about it is that as soon as you get back to your laptop or your desktop computer at the office or whatever it is, all that information, everything that you took down is boom, it's right in your computer. And I'm not sure about you, but I can tell you that as someone that hand wrote notes for a lot of years in meetings, I can certainly type a lot faster with my thumbs than I can write, in terms of with pen and paper. And so that's a super easy thing that people can do. Another thing is, especially as remodelers, there's always a need for us to know what's behind a wall, right? We board up a house or we board up a project, whatever, could be a small basement or a bathroom or a kitchen or a main floor. And we forgot what's in the wall. And maybe we can't find a circuit that's not activating because the boarder's boarded over a receptacle. And we want to kind of see a picture of the wall. And so, one of the practices I tell everybody to do is you have to photograph every single wall and every single ceiling, before you insulate, after you insulate, and then that way you have those pictures so you always know where to find stuff. But imagine now having that at the fingertips, right? So if you just organize it on Google Drive inside of each project, and you've got your iPad with you, and I keep saying iPad, it could be tablet.
Could be Surface.
Could be Surface, whatever it is, you can literally pull it up. So I've had situations where I'm standing there with a plumber, we're trying to figure out something where there's backing, where there's not backing for a wall hung vanity or something like that. And I was able to pull up the picture, and he just looked at me and smiled. He's like, that's amazing. And so that's such a little thing, but the value is immense.
Yeah. Getting a little excited now. So if you circle back to what you said about your iPad, now you were typing it, but I'm thinking of two of my clients, Bill Tanas with Key Builders in beautiful Grand Ledge, Michigan, and Ben Templeton Building Company. Both of them are using Surfaces, and they have a little pen, because a few years ago when it's like, guys, you're handwriting all this stuff out, and then you're handing it off to your estimator or your office manager in your office to kind of move things forward. It's just clunky, guys. Yeah, but I don't like typing. I like to write things out. All of a sudden, then they found a device and they were able to write it out. They got used to it. And, Ben talks about how when he gets back in the truck, click, upload to, I think they might be using Google Suites, or it might even just be like an internal server, but he's able to upload some sketches he made out, the different notes, the different details. He's got a couple Google Forms now, or thereabouts, where he's kind of checking things off. His team is able to start working on things, or starting to put the folder together and some of the details together before he's even back in the office. That's what gets me excited, is if you are handwriting things out, getting into the weeds and getting a device, and even if you want to handwrite it, that's okay, as long as you're doing it digitally. It can be such a beneficial way of streamlining the process, and having just the digital copies of this can be so incredibly valuable.
Oh, for sure. And let me build on that. There's, for the guys that are still like, I get that, but I still love my notebook. So the one thing I could say I can add to this is, and it's a bit of a hybrid of the idea, is, Evernote has partnered with Moleskine, for example. And so they have a book where you can write out notes, and then you can actually scan it and it will digitize it. So it won't just take a picture, it'll actually digitize the information so that it's in your Evernote platform. Now, that's a few extra steps. It's not as clear, or as easy as kind of using Drive and stuff like that. But it's definitely, for the people that are still listening to this and like, I get it, but they're holding their book in their hand right now. And, they're saying, I still love, kind of the feel of paper and writing down and all of that. That's another option as well. But I mean, to echo your point, it's like, having that information just translated instantly, just the expediency of it all is just amazing.
Yeah. And the other example you gave of taking photos, if you're listening to this and you're not very technology adept, you can still say to your team, or you can still start digging into it of going, okay, I'm on a job site. I'm going to, during my sales process, I'm going to take a bunch of photos. I'm going to take some videos that just says, I want to take some videos so that when I get back and start doing design or et cetera work, how can I easily take all of the photos and take all of the videos that I created and put them in a folder for this specific client, so that when I'm sitting at my desk, I click on that name and I can see it. And then to ask that question and to research that question, look into it, can be incredibly beneficial. And then you add another layer onto that and go, okay, during the process, who on my team needs to have an iPad, needs to have some type of device? Frankly, our smartphones can do so much of it. How can we then get all of those in progress photos into that same folder? A little bit of organization and setting up the system right can be incredibly beneficial. And I think now is a great time as ever to work on this and to do it. Again, productivity, efficiency, makes you more profitable. You can go back, warranty issues like you were talking about, so many ways that this can be beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of the things I usually start with the people that work with me is just getting organized digitally, because it's often, I think really what it comes down to is people, you asked right at the beginning is kind of, what does it mean when we say technology in your construction business? And it does not mean that you have, robots everywhere and all these fancy, systems and IT servers and IT people and all this sort of thing. I mean, some companies do, but the reality is, it's just some simple things that you put in place that can really help to kind of leverage things. And, having tablets in your company that are basically just loaded, the only purpose of them is to be loaded with the company sort of G Suite. They have standard documents, all that sort of stuff. I want to take this and build on this a little bit as well, because this is a remodel your marketing, podcast. And so if we take this to the marketing side for a second, in terms of, can we do that?
Why do I have to do this in like every single stinking interview? I'm in charge.
I'm an avid listener, as you know. So,
I sometimes do this. I have marketing benefit written down here, but where the host was going, I was doubling down on improve what you have for marketing.
All right.
But I wanted to double down on improve them, because we're getting into some specifics where people are going to be able to grab this and go, "Ooh, hey, I heard this on this podcast. What can we do on that?" So I love where your head's going, and it is remodeling marketing. But stick with the improve what you have first. All right. So we talked about a few of them. Talking about email.
Yeah.
Emails. How can I utilize that better as a remodeler, as a remodeling business owner?
Yeah. So a couple big things, as we all know, that, the three sort of legs of the stool is, you've got to basically estimate and sell work. And so when we talk about what we can do with our email to help on that side is, I always ask people, are you using a CRM or a client relations management sort of tool? And there's tons of them out there. There's obviously the biggest one, I think, is Salesforce out there. And I'm not suggesting everyone go sign up for Salesforce right now. Here's what I'll tell you. For email, there's a few apps that I tell people to basically download. They're free. So one is called Streak for Gmail. It is a CRM program that integrates right into your email inbox. It's fantastic. I've used it for years. Streak. Yes. Like I'm on a hot streak. And it's great. It's fantastic. It takes a little bit of time just to get used to it, but it is fairly intuitive. You can set up filters inside of your own email platform. It's all kind of there in one place. So the beautiful part is anytime someone emails you, it automatically goes into what's called the client box. And then when we talk about the leverage there, the productivity component is that everybody on your team, of course, can see that. You can record all the notes from all your meetings, so you can have a history, much like a Slack channel, but without having to pay for Slack and having an extra sort of thing. It's literally right there in your email. And I think that's one of the big things is that people are also, when we talk about objections, and another thing we have to learn, are you going to have 5 to 10 different apps that you always have to kind of bounce around? And one of my sort of ideas is to try to integrate into the things you're already using. So Streak is one of them. Another one that's really great is Boomerang. And so this comes really down to a lot of the expectations we set with clients. And for years, and I was doing the wrong things, which was, and I'm calling everybody out again, so you can raise your hand if you're doing this, but, are you sending emails at 3:00 in the afternoon on a Sunday to your clients? And are they responding at 3:05? And what happens when that happens? They're expecting you're going to write back at 3:10. And so Boomerang is a really great service because you can actually schedule send all of your emails. So you can clear your inbox on a Sunday or whatever, late night kind of on a Monday. and you can write all your drafts and schedule them all to start going out at 6 in the morning. And you
Yep.
can kind of even play around with it and go 6:01, 6:03, 6:07. So it looks like you're physically there working at your desk. Another really cool feature about it is you can actually pause your inbox. I think that most people that had raised their hand earlier, that their email kind of runs them and it's always overflowing. One of the big challenges, you start responding to emails. Well, what happens? You start getting replies to those replies that you just sent, and you can't actually clear out the rest of the email box. So definitely downloading Boomerang and Streak are two really fantastic things that you can do.
And both those, all of that is kind of within Gmail. So if you're using Outlook, there may be some other apps. What you're talking about is Gmail, where a lot of people are using Gmail. I'm using Gmail. Like my inbox is paused right now because I want to be focused. When I want to be focused, if I need, man, I've got to hunker down and get this done. Nothing is better than clicking pause inbox, and it's set up where it's not going to show up on my phone. It's just everything's holding right there. So again, those are Gmail. And then what you talked about with Boomerang, it's a super helpful thing for all the reasons you mentioned, and also just keeping those boundaries with clients, where they need to be, not in the late evenings or not in, on the weekend. Although as business owners, we sometimes are working at those hours to catch up on things.
For sure. We just don't want to be visible with that. Yeah. We don't want to be visible and set it. I just want to mention that you can integrate using Zapier, or Zapier. It's, is basically, I don't know how to really explain this, but it's kind of just an integration tool that connects different applications. So you can actually connect Streak to Outlook. So that does work. And I believe Boomerang also does that as well. Okay. There's one other thing I just really want to say about Gmail, and it is related a little bit to marketing still, but again, this is the remodeling, remarketing podcast. One thing I did for years was they used to have something called candid responses, I believe. It's now called templates in Gmail. If you don't have this setting on, you'll find it in your settings under advanced. It is a fantastic thing to set up. I have, for example, a series of emails that I would send out to clients just in general, but from a sales side, let's just say you have 5 standard emails that you kind of send out to people in a sequence. You can have these pre-written in with about 3 clicks. You hit like the last one and boom, the whole email shows up. Now you might want to tweak a little bit of it. You're going to obviously change the addressee and things like that, or put in something specific about them. But the leverage there is fantastic. You can also share those with people on your team. If they're in your G Suite organization, you can share those templates and so they can load them in as well. So it's, we all write some great emails, but then you go and rewrite those things again for every single client. So it's another,
I think right there, and there's so many of them. Like for example, right now, I think coming out of this, we might hear some more than usual objections to, can we buy materials directly instead of through you? Well, it's if some of these things are just good conversations, but let's say you just had a really great response as to why and your strategy behind it. You save that as a template. Again, I think it is called templates. It used to be canned responses, like you said. You set that up as a template, or that email that you send out between the initial phone call and the in-person meeting. It's got everything in there, and you click, there it shows up. You put the date and time in there. Again, that saves 3 minutes. That helps you be more professional, more efficient, quicker, better. And running a successful remodeling business is not about one magic bullet. It's about a combination of a lot of little things, and technology can help you do that so well.
For sure. And just, to echo that point, I think one of the things you said that was really, really key. Sometimes it's not about the productivity component. Yes, having those templates in place and just clicking the button and having it there is fantastic. But you said getting better. And that's, kind of what we talk about when we talk about consistency in a business. And that's something that I hear a lot from the remodeling clients that I work with is, how do I get my team to, basically produce a consistent result? So this is a great, sort of tool that you can use to actually help control that.
Yeah. Excellent. So Bryan's very organized. So he sent me interviewing him is super easy. 1, he's charismatic and wonderful. 2, he sent me this list of different questions, and I've been kind of massaging them, making them my own. But this next one, I don't know exactly where you're going with it, because it says systems thinking. So I want you to tell us about systems thinking when it ties to technology. And the example you said was, firefighting with a 2-pound extinguisher versus a fire truck. So I want you to hear about that analogy.
I love using the fire truck example simply because I think as business owners in the remodeling space, depending, regardless of really the size of your business, I think we tend to run around a lot and firefight. And I think that's a really great way to describe it. So the idea with systems thinking is, what can you put in place that can be repeated? You know, kind of as we just were finishing up the talk about email there, I talked about how, you know, you can control the outcome of your, you know, of the client experience, for example, from your team by implementing this like kind of template system. So that's an example of systems thinking. So it's kind of looking at something and saying, what is one thing that I can put into place that's going to have a much greater effect overall, as opposed to a one-to-one input. And so the idea with the 2-pound fire extinguishers, you know, just think about it. And I'm sure there's lots of people right now, probably, you know, some of the folks that are driving in their trucks right now, or their cars, going from project to project and just basically firefighting, just putting out one fire at a time with this tiny little 2-pound fire extinguisher. Well, imagine for a second that you had a fire truck putting it out. So the fire truck is the tech. So a great example is digital timesheets, right? Instead of driving around to every single site and trying to get all these paper timesheets, you now have a digital platform where, you know, you've put in this systems-based approach to how you kind of collect the information, and you're now sitting at your desk and you didn't have to go anywhere to get it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Give me some more examples of systems thinking. And I think it's because I think it's something that doesn't come as natural to business owners to really step back and say. I think a lot of times we go directly into the tactic. Oh, what software can I use for this? What software should I pick for this? Versus looking at a little bit of the strategy and the system behind it. So what are a couple other examples? If I'm a remodeler listening to this and you're hearing, yes, thank you for that reminder. I need to be thinking more systems. I need to be thinking more bigger picture. What are some other areas in their business that you typically see are other opportunities for this?
Yeah. So, and great question to expand on it.
Thank you.
I think estimating is one of those ones that I think people really have. I just know there's a ton of time that people spend doing it. I know this because I did it for a very, very long time. And I know there's so much information we have to kind of compile. And I think a lot of times I think the typical behavior, because I did this for a long time as well, and I see this in a lot of my clients, is you open up the last estimate that you did, because that last estimate probably best represents how far you've come along in terms of like developing that actual, I'll go quote unquote template, because it's not really a template. It's just somebody else's estimate. Yeah. So it's kind of stepping back for a second. So that's the granular, but step back for a second and say, what components could I put in place to help me leverage other people's efforts to improve that system? So one of the great things is that it, you know, is basically reaching out to all of your trades with scopes of work or requests for proposals, RFPs, and that kind of whole process of you do a little bit of work, you put it out to everybody, they do a lot more of the work, and it all comes back to you. So that's an idea of kind of stepping back and saying, what components are, you know, needed for me to actually put out a proper estimate? You know, we've got to compile information. We've got to get information from the client. If you're working with an architect or designer, you need to get information from them. You obviously need from your trade partners, you need a lot of information from them as well. And as the quarterback of the whole operation, of course, you know, it's just a lot of weight on you. So it's kind of stepping back and saying, how can I put different things in place to kind of systematize the process?
Yeah. And what's so interesting about it is even thinking, yes, you know, there's fancier software, but when I think of that, I think, okay, you know, one of the pieces of this is I need to have really good photos and videos that I can show them. Okay, I need that tech piece where I could just copy and paste that over to them, a link to it. You know, there's probably just some common information that they need as far as number of this, number of that. If I had a nice template that I could use that, which would make it quicker for them to quote it back to me. There's just so many little things. Using a program like Zoom to you know, do a video of it, using a program like Loom, Loom, where I can say, you know, hey, Bryan, before you quote this electrical work, what I wanted to show you on a couple of these drawings is this, that, the other. You know, you're seeing my face, you're seeing my screen. I click a button, I got a link for you. There's just so many practical ways to streamline it. And just what you're saying, okay, I'm going to do a full systems thinking of this estimating process. Where are the weak points? Where can I leverage it? Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
For sure. And one of the big things I'll say as a caution or, you know, pitfall kind of thing, which I know we're going to get to, is, you know, don't
you think, now you're thinking, you know where I'm going. You're like, well, he's got the marketing, and I put on question number 8, common pitfall. So certainly he's going to get to that. Maybe I might not. Now I probably won't actually.
Well, I was just going to say, don't get into what I call paralysis analysis, right? It's not my term. It's out there in the sphere. of the
Yeah.
world. But you know, the idea is don't rack your brain trying to think of this magic blue pill, because systems thinking is not really about that. It's about looking and experiencing your results, understanding, you know, and also getting opinions from people around you. So if you have past clients, for example, they are a great source, immense wealth of opportunity to learn from. You just have to know how to ask the questions in the right way. If you have team members that, you know, site supers or PMs, or, you know, you're a smaller company, it's you and, you know, a couple guys kind of thing, or guys and gals, you know, talk to them, get some feedback from them, understand the process a little bit. You'd be surprised what you'll learn if you're willing to listen.
Yeah. And on the client side, maybe you do have some client portal, some communication back and forth, and maybe they didn't like it. Maybe they thought it was clunky. It was hard to access. You know, sometimes even when, and I think that's a good kind of reminder, is so often we do analyze till we're blue in the face. And then, you know, we finally implement it. Well, part of improving in anything is taking some steps forward and trying something. So often that may have been a failure. That software is clunky and that's not working like I wanted it to, but it's going to be that next step to show you the next iteration of it or the next improvement of it. I think so often we wait for it to be perfect versus let's get this out there. Let's see if it works or not. And then that's what usually gives you clarity on how to improve it.
Yep. You know, this sums it up perfectly. Done is better than perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. I've been wanting for, you know, for minutes and minutes to talk about the marketing and sales benefits of technology. Can we finally get to that? Talk to me about a few of those that come to mind.
For sure. So we talked about a couple of them already. We talked about the templates, for example, in your Gmail, and having, you know, basically consistency in your sales process. So again, you know, between that initial phone call and that first in-person visit, having that standard type of response, that professional email that you send out that I know you and I talk about to death and we talk about all the time. It's such a simple but very valuable and important thing. So having that, you know, sort of systemized is really important. You know, so those are that's like some of the granular sort of thing. You also mentioned Loom a minute ago, and different from Zoom. So Loom is more of a one-sided type of video platform for those that aren't familiar with it. Zoom, you know, is kind of both sides, and you can have groups and stuff like that. In the sales process, don't be afraid of video. If you look at the analytics of your website and you actually dig into it, you will see that typically the team page, if you have photos of yourself and your team on your actual company website, those will outperform the portfolio pictures in your website. It's usually the top page hit, aside from your homepage, of course, because that's where they're landing. And it's because people like to people watch. So if we transition this a little bit to you're leveraging technology to improve your business, and on the marketing side, send a 30 to 60 second video, right? That you send a little link in an email and say, and then someone's going to click it. They see your face, they see you talking, you're giving them something of value, right? But the most important thing is you're making that actual, it's like you're in the room with them right now. They can't respond to you, of course, but you know, that kind of idea is I think it's something that I've started doing, and, you know, it's such a valuable thing to do, and it's so easy to do too. That's the great part about it.
An iteration on that is, one of my clients down south is, they've got somebody on their team that's kind of their salesperson, and there's a handoff to production. So it goes from Peter to Scott, and Scott's been doing more of just a quick video that says, hey, you know, I'm Scott. I'm so excited to be working on your project. I'll be reaching out in the coming days, but I just wanted to introduce myself. We are thrilled that you're a client of ours. So just a little further down the sales process. But again, marketing, sales, building know, like, and trust. It's a wonderful way to build know, like, and trust. So, you know, you just hit on several of the marketing things, and marketing and sales kind of coexist. But I think from your homeowners, your prospects, seeing how you use technology is such a help on the sales front. You mentioned it earlier of, like, you know, make sure they know that you're taking notes. But just as you say, if I were to say, you know what, I'm going to take some different pictures. I'm also going to do a couple of videos where I just pan the room. As we move into the design and development, you know, myself and my designer, we're going to want to go back and see these photos and videos. What I'll do when I'm done with that, we just click a few buttons, we upload that to our cloud system. That way my whole team is able to access it. Even if I just said that, which again, it's called using your phone, uploading it to a cloud-based folder, you know, on Gmail. A homeowner hearing that, all of a sudden it's like, man, they've got their crap together. They're organized. They've got a process. This is not their first rodeo. And you talk about building know, like, and trust, showing off some of the technology and explaining how you work. so many of our homeowners, are choosing us because they're confident that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And wow, technology can really impress people with our organization, and just, I like these guys, and I feel like they're going to do a great job.
And that's such a great point that you raised. And I think the reason that works so well is because you've packaged it really well. So when we talk about the marketing benefit, yes, they're going to look at us and be like, wow, they've really got their stuff together. Like, they've got this incredible process. Imagine what it's going to be like working with them when they actually build my project. Because if this is how they act in the sales process, wow, I can only imagine how it's going to kind of turn out.
Yeah.
And, you can even, to build on this one step further, a little earlier in this chat, you asked me about some other examples of, kind of systems thinking and stuff like that. And one of the things is, kind of checklists for the construction process, right? Having a standardized approach to it so that you can kind of replicate with consistency the product that you deliver and the client experience that you're going to deliver as well. When you can speak to that really early in that sales process and they can understand, it's just packaging it. It's actually not really a tech thing, so to speak. It's not like it's an app or anything. It's really just a system that people go through. And so that's where you can kind of almost like, again, productize it. You can package it in a way that really resonates with people. And, it just really helps to build, as you say, the know, like, and trust, and the understanding that you guys are really organized. We're a really organized building company.
Yeah. And even
seriously.
And we've touched a little bit on Builder Trend and Co-Construct, but whether you're using that, whether you're using like a team Gantt to do scheduling in your sales process, in your content you're producing on your website, a nice blog post. Here's an example of how we go about scheduling out a project. When we're going through the process, when we start a project, our homeowners are able to view the schedule. We care about staying on time, on budget. That's why we ask so many. There's just so many ways to integrate this into our process. And if hopefully that's a takeaway for the people listening of going, what am I already doing that I'm not telling homeowners about, that I'm not just making a little bit more of a deal about? Because wow, all of that ties in with their perception of who we are, how organized we are, and their confidence in us. Cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. I feel like we hit on common pitfalls. What would be one other common pitfall when we talk about technology and remodeling business?
I mean, the thing I always kind of tell people is didn't make up this acronym, but it just has a different connotation, is the acronym is SOL. And so what I try to tell people is, keep it really, really simple. So like we talked about, kind of a lean management, or a lean technology approach to things, try to maximize and leverage the things that you're already using before you start adding additional pieces to it. Because the last thing you probably want is another 5 apps that you have to now go and try and learn, as well as get your team, and maybe, as you pointed out, your clients to try to interact with, which not everyone wants to do. The O stands for kind of one thing, one project, one person. And, it's applicable to small companies and medium companies as well. But the idea being that if you sign up for Build-A-Trend or Co-Construct or Procore or something, don't go and try to take every single project you have and put it into that platform and try to utilize it to its full extent. It's going to take you months, if not years, to fully understand and maximize that software, because it's also always changing. So it's important to kind of start with just one project and just start with one thing. It could be scheduling. Just try using the scheduling, just have one person doing that. And, the beautiful part about this, from, side benefit of this from a team building perspective, is that if you get somebody that becomes proficient in it, they become an ambassador on it. And, I know we don't like to talk about like pyramidal sort of corporate structures in companies and stuff, but the reality is a lot of that still exists. If you can get people beside each other, sort of doing the same role, but one person was using that tech, when we talk about that adoption being an issue, that's a great way to help kind of leverage that one person that's also, streamlining your company for you, but also to get everybody else on board.
So it's this SO, and then what's the L?
And the L is layer with scale. So it kind of sums up the top two, but the idea is that if you just start a construction business, don't go and sign up for Co-Construct or Build-A-Trend or Procore. And I'm not trying to dissuade people from signing up from those platforms, because they are fantastic platforms. They each do something really, really well. They have pros and cons to each of them. The point is really that, kind of similar to the one thing, one project, one person, you're going to probably do too much too quickly. And what ends up happening is that it's kind of like, January 1st comes around and everyone says, I'm going to get in the best shape of my life this year. And by February 1st, most people have dropped out of the gym. So that's the human nature of kind of, when we get too excited about something, we don't follow through. So layer with scale, just go slowly, kind of like we touched on a little bit earlier in this chat about iterating, right? Learning from the results of our experience. And even if it didn't work, that's fine, because we learned something from it. We understand ourselves better, and we're able to then, kind of, yeah, square peg, round hole. We're able to actually fit the right sort of, round peg in there, as opposed to trying to force this square peg in it.
Yeah, something that comes to mind is just like a challenge for everybody listening to this is, you rewind the clock 6 months ago in your remodeling business. Are you still using technology pretty much the same way? Have you added any new iteration? Have you updated? Have you worked to incorporate more technology in the last 6 months? If not, you got to get after it. And this is just going to be a never ending thing. We need to continually look at how can I implement more technology, not because I want things to be cumbersome or we need more software or this or that, but because it is the key to better productivity, efficiency, profitability. And there's, our industry, definitely over the last year have really turned the heat up. I'm seeing just more people embracing this. And I think out of this whole COVID thing, I think we're going to realize, you know what? I mean, we're going to have people saying, hey, instead of us meeting together to review the design, can we meet via Zoom? I've never heard one of my clients actually hear a homeowner say, can we just meet via Zoom? We're going to hear that. There's no doubt there's millions of people that are becoming more familiar, more comfortable with this. You talk about integration with some of these project management softwares. Our homeowners, I feel, there's a lot of grandma and grandpas who are, and maybe older folks, or a lot of our clients who are using technology in a way they've never used it before. That's gonna ripple down to us in a good way. So Bryan, this was very, very helpful. If you're somebody on the other end of this line listening to this, and I was to say, okay, out of everything we kind of shared, Bryan, what would be something you kind of wanted to really emphasize again, or what's a really key takeaway that you want people to hear about the topic? What comes to your mind? And then I'll share what comes to my mind.
Yeah, I think the big one for me, if I had to put it into one, is just kind of take stock of what you're currently using and learn how to maximize that before you start adding anything else to your construction business. So it can be email, it can be, if you are using a project management software, it can be really taking stock of how you're using it, understanding and learning from the people around you, like I mentioned, and just getting some feedback about, what things are working, what things aren't working. It's exactly like we talk about after a sales call, what worked, what didn't work, kind of thing. Same sort of approach here. So really, my core takeaway would be maximize what you have before you start adding new pieces.
Cool. And there's something you said that jumped out at me, and I feel like it's just kind of relevant for where we're at right now, where, some people on our team might have a little bit more time on their hands. We might have a little bit more time on our hands. This idea of trying to not be the top-down leader that says, we're going to use this, we're going to do that, but to say, all right, technology in our business. What are some areas where you guys see that we could implement some things to help streamline it? What have we tried in the past that didn't work? Let's talk about it. Let's look at this, and let's get some feedback from our team, whether it's subs, whether it's trade partners, whether it's employees there. And then that idea of also, if you have a client that you're just really close with, and that, you could call them up and they answer and they'll talk to you about anything. Hey, when you went through that kitchen remodel, were there some areas like what technology could we have done? You're using Zoom. Would that have been effective? Get some feedback from the real world. I think that's a key takeaway. And just start somewhere. Cool. So Bryan, if people wanted to get a hold of you, you do business coaching for contractors, remodelers. We have a little bit of overlap in the type of work we do, but we also both look at it as from a standpoint of there's plenty of work to go around, and there's a lot of people that need help, and just continue to surround yourself with good people. And there's people that your approach is going to be better for them than my approach. So I love approaching business like that, and you do as well. That's why we get along. So if people wanted to, except for if you're an active client of mine, don't reach out to Bryan and be like, I no longer want to work with Kyle, but I'll work with you. But for all the rest of you, if people wanted to get a hold of you, talk to you a little bit about what you do, what's the best ways for them to do that?
Yeah, thanks so much. The easiest way is constructionconsulting.co. Note that that's a .co or .co, not a .com.
Couldn't afford the .com, huh, big boy?
Yeah, it's probably pretty expensive. I haven't actually looked. Imagine. So, but so constructionconsulting.co is an easy way to get in touch with me. You can book a call right through the website there. I'm very active on both LinkedIn and Instagram as well. On Instagram, the handle is @constructionconsulting.co. And on LinkedIn, you just search my name. It's Bryan Kaplan, Bryan, and Kaplan with a K. and you'll find me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of articles there as well, specific to kind of that. We call it, we always joke, we call it renovations up here in Canada. And actually some places in the States call it renovations as well, but generally accepted as remodeling. So, but, stuff I post is very specific to my time in the business. I spent 20 years, and 85% of it was in that real high end type of residential remodeling sort of space. And so, yeah, all the stuff that I kind of post there is really relevant for I think some of the challenges that you go through probably on a daily basis.
Yep. Awesome.
Oh,
well,
and let me
pleasure.
let me just add, you can also email me, brian@constructionconsulting.co.
Beautiful. Bryan.
That's Brian with a Y.
Is that the correct way of spelling it, or is that?
Well, I don't know. We're going to get existential if we talk about correct and and not correct. Who knows? So,
okay.
I'll upset a lot of Brian's with an I if I say anything.
You've used so many big words, existential, and like, I got to get my dictionary out and look all these things up as I replay it. No, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you sharing just your time, your experience, your wisdom here. And I think there's going to be some good takeaways. There's nothing better as a coach or a consultant than, I don't care if it's a paid client that we do. Of course, we want to see progress there. But the reason Bryan puts out so much content, the reason I put out content, there is nothing better than hearing somebody that actually grabbed something that they heard and implemented it. So I'm going to close with that. If you heard something, like, have that conversation with your team. Do that research. Look into this. Buy that stinking tablet. Okay, fine. I'll buy it. I'm going to test it out. I'm going to try it. We would love nothing more than that. That's why we do it. So awesome. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much.